We continue now at the top of Daf Zayin Amud Beis in Meseches Rosh Hashana. This is Rosh Hashana Daf 7b. The Gemara says that if a private individual donates for the bringing of the public korbanos, that's fine as long as he donates it to the tzibur, to the public. So the Gemara says that's obvious. If he donates it to the public, of course it could be used for the public korbanos. So the Gemara says no. You might have thought lo yimsrim l'tzibur yafa yafa. Maybe he's not going to give, as Rashi says, belev shalim. He's not going to give it over to the public with a full heart. Maybe we should be afraid of that. So kamash malon. So that's what it's coming to teach us, that no, if he donates it to the public, it can be used for the korbanos tzibur. And so the Gemara says Vitana didan, but what about our Tana? As Rashi over here says, Vitana didan delo Tanya b'mas Nisan. Our Tana in the Mishnah doesn't have this case over here. In other words, it doesn't say that Nisan is the Rosh Hashana when it comes to the Trumas Shgalim. And so the Gemara says, Kevan to Katani im hevi yatsa lo psikale. Now, since it says over here, we said that let's say you bring from the old Shgalim, you don't have to bring, even though you're supposed to bring the korbanos tzibur and Nisan from the new Shgalim. If you don't do it, it still works. So therefore, since you're yotze anyway, if you bring from the old Shgalim, so we don't list it in our Mishnah of things that Nisan is considered the Rosh Hashana for, if it's not something that absolutely must be done in that fashion. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, some people say that Nisan is also the Rosh Hashana for the renting of houses. We said that means that if you rent a house for the year, then when Rosh Chodesh Nisan comes, that's the end of that year, that's the end of your rental. Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Hamaskir bayis l'chaveru l'shana. If somebody rents a house to his friend for a year with that phrasing, so Mona Shnei Masar Chodesh miyom liyom. That means 12 months from the day that you rented it out. That means it's for an entire year. It doesn't go by the calendar year. It goes by the date that you actually started the rental. You get an entire year from that point in time. V'imamar l'shana zu. Now, however, if the phrasing is that you're going to rent it for this year, so then it goes by the calendar year. So afilu lo amad ela be'echad ba'adar, even if the person only started the rental on the 1st of Adar, Kevan shehigia yom echad b'Nisan, once the first day of Nisan comes, also lo shana, that's the end of this year, that is the end of the rental. The Gemara says, V'afilu l'man da'amar yom echad b'shana chashav shana. Now, even according to the one who says that one day in a year is considered a year, so why did we give an example of the 1st of Adar, that you get it for 30 days? Let's even say on the very last day of Adar, you only get it for one day, you get it for this year, until Rosh Chodesh Nisan, but that's not true. Shani hach, it's different over here. Lo tarach inish l'megar beisa levatzer mitlas and yom. And nobody's going to rent a house for less than 30 days. So it's got to be at least Rosh Chodesh Adar. If it happens on Rosh Chodesh Adar that you rent the house, and you rent it for this year, then you're going to get until Nisan. As Rashi over here says, Ela be'echad ba'adar, on the 1st of Adar, avol be'batzer mehachi, but if it's less than that, lo amrin, and also lo shana. You don't say that when Nisan comes, that's the whole year. V'dar ba shana shlema. And you don't say that, oh, now he's lived there for a whole year. It can't be that the guy meant this year until Nisan. Nobody's going to rent out a house for less than 30 days. So it only applies if it's on the 1st of Adar and you rent it out to the guy and you say it's for this year, then when Nisan comes, that's the end of this year. And the Gemara continues, Ve'ema Tishrei. But why not say that Tishrei is the Rosh Hashana? Why not say again that if you would rent out the house, let's say on the 1st of Elul for this year, then when Tishrei comes, which is the Rosh Hashana, that should be the end of the rental, that should be the end of the year. So the Gemara answers, Stam ki yagar inish beisel lekulu yemos hageshamim agar. Because Stam, when a person rents a house, they're going to want it for the whole rainy season. No one's going to want to be kicked out on Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, because that means that for the rainy season, they have to find a place to live. So it's obvious in that situation, the person doesn't mean to say that he only wants to rent it out until Tishrei. And the Gemara says, V'tanakama de Braisa, and the Tanakama of the Braisa, V'tana didan, and also our Tana, they don't say that Nisan is the Rosh Hashana for Schiras Batim. Why don't they count Nisan as the Rosh Hashana for Schiras Batim? And so the Gemara says, B'Nisan nami mishkach shchiach kitrei. Even in Nisan also, it could be that there are clouds. Clouds are common in Nisan. It's considered the rainy season as well. Nobody wants to be kicked out of the house on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. There still is a chance of rain, and therefore, again, you're not going to say, according to the Tanakama of the Braisa, and according to the Tana of our Mishnah, we are not going to say that Nisan is considered the Rosh Hashana for Schiras Batim. The Gemara continues at the two dots, quoting the Mishnah, V'echad ve'elul Rosh Hashana l'maiser behema. On the 1st of Elul, that's the Rosh Hashana when it comes to Maiser behema. And the Gemara says, Moni, who is the author of our Mishnah? Rabbi Meir. It's Rabbi Meir. Tetnan, as we learned in the Mishnah, this is a Mishnah in Bechoros. Rabbi Meir says, Be'echad be'elul Rosh Hashana l'maiser behema. It says on the 1st of Elul, again, is the Rosh Hashana for Maiser behema. So you see that our Mishnah is Rabbi Meir. And the Gemara continues, V'l'regalim money. So our Mishnah said again that Nisan is the Rosh Hashana for regalim, for the holidays. Who is that? Rabbi Shimon. So that's Rabbi Shimon, like we said. Rashi over here says, V'leregalim money Rabbi Shimon d'ha'alibeyu kimna the islay kisidron lebal ta'acher. Rabbi Shimon is the one that says that when it comes to the prohibition of bal ta'acher, we follow the regalim in order. So we start from Nisan. The idea is, again, that Pesach is the first of the regalim in terms of Baal Ta'achir. So that line in the Mishnah was authored by Rabbi Shimon. And so the Gemara continues, Amos Seifa, let's look at the end of the Mishnah. Rebbe Lazar of Rabbi Shimon Omrim, it says at the end of the Mishnah that Rebbe Lazar and Rabbi Shimon say, B'echad b'Tishrei. They say that when it comes to the Rosh Hashanah for the Meiser Behema, they say that it's on the first of Tishrei. And so the Gemara asks, Reisha v'Seifa Rabbi Shimon, are we going to say that the beginning of the Mishnah and the end of the Mishnah, in other words, the part of the Mishnah which talks about Nisan being the Rosh Hashanah l'Regalim, that's going to be Rabbi Shimon. And the end of the Mishnah where it talks about Rebbe Lazar and Rabbi Shimon say the first of Tishrei is the Rosh Hashanah for Meiser Behema, so those are Rabbi Shimon, U'mitziyas Rabbi Meir. In the middle of the Mishnah is Rabbi Meir's opinion that again Echad Be'elul is the Rosh Hashanah for Meiser Behema. And so the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yosef says, Rebbe, really the entire Mishnah follows the opinion of Rebbe. V'nasiv lo aliba de Tanoim. He's bringing down the various opinions of the Tanoim. And Rashi over here says, Rebbe he hu amar l'masnis. And Rebbe really is the author of the Mishnah. V'nasiv milsei chodak echatana v'chodak echatana. He brings his opinion. Sometimes he follows one Tana, sometimes he follows another Tana. As the Gemara explains, B'regalim savar lo Rabbi Shimon. When it comes to the issue of regalim, so there Rebbe holds like Rabbi Shimon. That's why he brings down that Nisan is the Rosh Hashanah when it comes to regalim. Over Meiser Behema, Savar like Rabbi Meir, and by Meiser Behema he holds like Rabbi Meir. So he just brings down stam that when it comes to Meiser Behema, the Rosh Hashanah is Echad Be'elul, and then he brings Rebbe Lazar and Rabbi Shimon's opinion that Echad B'Tishrei is the Rosh Hashanah when it comes to Meiser Behema. And so the Gemara says, Ihachi, if so, Rashi over here says, Ihachi, if so, Dechad Gavra Amr L'Masnisin. If you're going to say that there's one Tana that holds of the entire Mishnah, that's the author of the whole Mishnah, V'nasav Milsei Chad Kechad Tan, and he's bringing his things according to one Tana, according to the different Tanoim. So Chamisha Rosh Hashanim Ninu. So then it really comes out that there should be 5 Rosh Hashanahs. There's Echad B'Nisan, V'Tesvav B'Nisan, V'Echad Be'elul, V'Echad B'Tishrei, V'Tesvav B'Shvat. There should be again 5 Rosh Hashanahs. The 1st of Nisan, the 15th of Nisan, the 1st of Elul, the 1st of Tishrei, and the 15th of Shvat. Now, it would work out well if you said the Reisha was following the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, meaning that Rabbi Shimon is the one that holds that Nisan is the Rosh Hashanah for a Golim, so Shapir, so then it would work out well. Because according to Rabbi Shimon, there really are only 4 Rosh Hashanahs. The less Echad Be'elul, because Rabbi Shimon doesn't hold of Echad Be'elul, so it works out fine. In other words, according to Rabbi Shimon, there are 4 of them because he doesn't hold of Echad Be'elul. But if it's all one Tana, in other words, if Rebbe agrees with Rabbi Shimon when it comes to the Regalim, when it comes to Nisan being Rosh Hashanah for the Regalim, but then he also agrees to Echad Be'elul of Rabbi Meir, that's Rosh Hashanah for Meiser Behema, so then Kasha, so then we don't have a Kasha, there's really going to be 5 Rosh Hashanahs and not 4. That's what the Gemara says here. Ihachi, if so, Arba, why does it say in the Mishnah there are 4 Rosh Hashanahs? Chamisha have there actually should be 5 Rosh Hashanahs. And so the Gemara answers, Amar Rava says, Arba l'divrei hakol. What the Mishnah means to say is that there's going to be 4 Rosh Hashanahs, at least according to all opinions. Rashi over here says, Amar Rava says, Liolam Rebbe he. Really, the Mishnah is authored by Rebbe. V'hachi kamar, and here's what it means to say. Ano chamisha svirli. I myself, Rebbe, hold there are 5 Rosh Hashanahs. Umiyu akol modim li barba, but nevertheless, everybody agrees that there are at least 4 Rosh Hashanahs. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Meir arba, because again, according to Rabbi Meir, there are 4. Dal regalim, because you subtract regalim. Rabbi Meir does not have the Rosh Hashanah of regalim of Nisan. And Rabbi Shimon, and according to Rabbi Shimon arba, there's also 4, because Dal Meiser Behema, because according to Rabbi Shimon, Rosh Chodesh Elul is not going to be the Rosh Hashanah for Meiser Behema. Rashi over here says, Rabbi Meir di islay echad be'elul, according to Rabbi Meir, who says the 1st of Elul is going to be the Rosh Hashanah for Meiser Behema. So Dal regalim, you can subtract regalim. Beregal echad over bebal ta'achar, because according to Rabbi Meir, even in one regal you're over bal ta'achar. He doesn't hold of this idea of 3 regalim kesidron. Kedetanya bebraisa deleel. That's what we learned in the brisa earlier. Well, Rabbi Shimon, and according to Rabbi Shimon, Dal Meiser Behema, you can subtract Meiser Behema. The Lesei Ela Bechad B'Tishrei, because again, he holds that the Rosh Hashanah for Meiser Behema is Echad B'Tishrei. Uvelav Meiser Nami Rosh Hashanah. Even without Meiser, Echad B'Tishrei already is going to be considered a Rosh Hashanah. So that's all the Mishnah means. All the Mishnah means to say is that everybody agrees there's going to be at least 4 Rosh Hashanahs. And the Gemara continues, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, Arba Chadashim, what the Mishnah really means is as follows. There are 4 months. Uvahen kama Rosh Hashanim. And within those 4 months, there might be multiple Rosh Hashanahs. In other words, you could have a situation of Nisan where Echad ben Nisan is a Rosh Hashanah, but also the 15th of Nisan is Rosh Hashanah, and that's all counted as one. And the Gemara continues, Meisvei, we have a question from the following Brisa. Shisha Asr ben Nisan, the 16th of Nisan, Rosh Hashanah la'omer, that's considered Rosh Hashanah as far as the Omer. In other words, from that point in time, when we bring the Karban ha'omer, so then we can eat from the Chadash, we can eat from the new grain. And Shisha b'Sivan, the 6th of Sivan, Rosh Hashanah l'shtei halechem, that's the Rosh Hashanah for the shtei halechem. What that means to say, as Rashi says, is Nischad Sha'ashana l'havi minachos min ha'chadash. Now you could bring Karban mincha from the Chadash, from the new grain. Sheha'omer mater b'Medina, because when you bring the Omer, that's when the new grain is allowed outside the Beis HaMikdash. U'shtei halechem b'Mikdash, and the shtei halechem, that allows you to bring the Karban mincha from the new grain in the Beis HaMikdash. And so the Gemara now says, L'Rava, according to Rava's answer, again, Rava saying that we're bringing the amount of Rosh Hashanahs that everybody agrees to. So listen, Shisha, we should have 6 Rosh Hashanahs that everybody agrees to, because again, you have the 16th of Nisan, and you have the 6th of Sivan. And Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, according to Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, that the Mishnah is listing all the months in which there are Rosh Hashanahs. So listen, Chamisha, so here we have an additional month. We should have a 5th month. The month of Sivan also has a Rosh Hashanah. And so the Gemara answers, Amar Rapapa says, Kika Chashiv, what's counted in the Mishnah? Midi Dechayil Meyor. So we're only counting things that start from the evening, from the night, when the day really begins. But Midi Delochayil Meyor Saloka Chashiv. But things that don't start from the night, we're not counting. In other words, when it comes to the Omer, that's brought during the day. When it comes to the Shtei HaLechem, that's brought during the day. So therefore, that's not listed in the Mishnah. And so the Gemara says, 1 second, V'harei Regalim. But what about holidays? Delochayil Meyorsa. That doesn't start from the night, v'kachashav, and that's counted in the Mishnah. As Rashi over here says, v'harei regalim dekatani mas nisan linyan bal ta'acher. Right? It says that there's an isra bal ta'acher that starts from the regalim. Dekasalka daitach. Right now we think zman bal ta'acher lav meyorsu keshekidish hayom chayil. It doesn't start from the nighttime bal ta'acher. Ela ad shetavo shashi ru'uya lahavi nedar v'nedavos. It only starts from the moment when you can begin to bring these karbanos. V'yein zo sachiyakrav tamid shel shacher. That's only after you bring the morning karban tamid. She'ein karban kodem, because there's no opportunity to bring a karban before the karban tamid. So the Baal Ta'achar doesn't start until the daytime when you bring the karban tamid in the morning. Umishaninan, and the Gemara is about to answer, Le'suye meikara mechayev. Really, no, there was an obligation to bring from the beginning. These are just deadlines to bring the karbanos. V'kai, that obligation stands. Lahavi karban nidro mechayev yomed mishash another. From the moment you make the promise to bring a karban, you have an obligation. V'haya lo lakriv me'erva regel. So, for example, you should have brought it already from before the regel. V'lo hukvu regalim l'bal ta'achar linyan hakravas karban. We're not talking about regalim for bal ta'achar in terms of the bringing of the karban. El linyan meichal aleh bal ta'achar. It just has to do with the deadline, the timing of when you transgress bal ta'achar. Umeor sanami chal. That starts, or that's chal, even from the evening. That's what the Gemara is about to answer. So the Gemara says, Kevan shetzarech le'suye meikara. Since really you needed to bring these karbanos all along from the beginning, so mechayev v'koi. You're already chayev. It's already, the chiyuv's already standing. The obligation's already standing, even from the night when the regel begins. But the Gemara continues, V'harei yovelos. But what about yovel? The lo chayli mior. So that's not from the nighttime. The kachashav, that's also counted in the Mishnah. Rashi over here says, V'harei yovelos to katani b'Rosh Hashanah demas nisan. That's in the Rosh Hashanahs of our Mishnah. The lo chayli el al yedei tkiyas shofar de bezin. When does yovel start? When they blow the shofar in bezin. Ve'ein ela b'yom. That's during the daytime. D'chsiv b'yom hakipurim taviru shofar. It says on the day of Yom Kippur, that's when they blow the shofar. So why is yovel mentioned in the Mishnah? And so the Gemara answers, Rabbi Yishmael ben Oshel Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. Our Mishnah follows the opinion of Rabbi Yishmael, the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, the Amar who says, May Rosh Hashana chayil yovel. He says already from Rosh Hashana, that's when yovel begins, as Rashi over here says, Ve'eno toli b'tiki. It's not dependent on the blowing of the shofar. Hilkoch may ursa the Rosh Hashana chayil. Therefore it starts from the night of Rosh Hashana. And the Gemara continues with another answer. Rav Shisha Brei Ravidi Amar. Rav Shisha Brei Ravidi says, Kika chashav. What is counted in our Mishnah? Midi de lo toli b'maisa. Only Rosh Hashanahs that are not dependent on an action. Midi de toli b'maisa lo kachashav. But things that are dependent on actions, we're not counting in our Mishnah. Rashi over here says, the lo toli b'maisa knisas Rosh Hashanah shalahen eina teluya b'maisa. That Rosh Hashanah begins without doing anything. Elim shigia yom have Rosh Hashanah. From the time the day comes, that's when it's Rosh Hashanah. Umischadesh es Hashanah lemilsei. The new year begins. But midi de toli b'maisa, something that's dependent on an action. Kigon Rosh Hashanah de Omer or Shtei Halechem. For example, the Rosh Hashanah of the Omer or the Shtei When the year starts, it's not all of a sudden magic that you can now have chadash, you can have new grain. You have to actually bring the carbon omer. You have to bring the kivsei atzeres. So therefore, we're not going to count that in the Mishnah because it's not the date which creates the halachic ramification. It's the actual bringing of the karbonos. But the Gemara says, "V'harei regalim." But what about the regalim? Midi detali b'maisav v'kachoshev. Isn't that something that's dependent on action, and that's counted in the Mishnah? Rashi over here says, "V'harei regalim kasal kadaitach." Right now we think she'ein bal ta'acher chal at shetavo shah haru'uyah lavos karbon nidro. Similar to what we said before, bal ta'acher is not chal until the moment comes where you could, in theory, bring the carbon. Nimsa shu tali b'tamid shel shachar. So you see that it's dependent on the bringing of the carbon tamid in the morning, which allows you to bring other karbanos. And the Gemara answers, no, again, Bal Ta'achar Memela Chayil. Bal Ta'achar comes on its own. It's not dependent on any action. As Rashi says, Memela Kachayil Mishakidash Hayom. Once the day begins, the Bal Ta'achar begins as well. And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Ches Amud Aleph.